So I want you to imagine a freelancer, and she has been just relentlessly grinding away at her craft for like 4 years now.
Oh, we all know the type.
Right. We're talking 12-hour workdays, um, routinely answering client emails at midnight, constantly throwing in extra revisions just because she wants the final product to be absolutely flawless.
Because she actually cares about the work.
Exactly. Her work is exceptional. Her clients rave about her. The referrals are steadily pouring in, and she consistently delivers results that go, way beyond the original brief.
Okay, but I feel like there's a but coming here.
There is a massive but. Here is the kicker. She is charging the exact same beginner rate today that she set 4 years ago when she first started out.
Oh, that hurts to hear.
It gets worse. Meanwhile, she discovers that a colleague of hers, someone who is, frankly, significantly less experienced, less polished, and producing work that honestly isn't even as strong, that person is charging 3 times her rate.
Man, that is just a gut punch of a realization. And it brings up a really uncomfortable, messy mix of shock, frustration, and honestly a bit of grief. Because it immediately forces you to look at your own business practices and ask some really hard questions.
Right. It triggers that inevitable, painful question of like, why have I been doing this to myself?
Yeah.
And that is exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
It's a great topic.
It really is. Today we are exploring a fascinating, intensely practical chapter called Undercharging and Over-Delivering: The Polite Path to Poverty. And this comes from the book The Mistakes Women Make That Are Holding Them Back.
A very literal title.
Very literal. And our mission for this deep dive is to figure out why the most talented woman in the room is so often the least paid. We're going to unpack the deep psychological roots of this undercharging epidemic, basically.
Right.
We'll calculate the staggering literal cost of this habit over time. And most importantly, we want to equip you with the unapologetic, practical steps to just make it stop.
I love that. And to start untangling this, we really need to completely reframe how we look at the problem.
Okay, how so?
Well, this isn't a skill issue. Like, if you are constantly undercharging and over-delivering, it is almost certainly not because you lack talent or ability. It is a valuation problem, and it's a problem that lives almost entirely in the mind.
Right.
In fact, there's a foundational quote from the source text we really need to keep coming back to. It says, "Your rate is not just a number. It is a declaration of how you see your own value, and the market will believe you."
Wow. The market will believe you. Just the idea that the market will simply accept whatever value you assign to yourself, it completely shifts the responsibility, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
But, to figure out how to fix this valuation problem, we have to look at the systemic reality that makes it so incredibly tricky to navigate in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't just happen in a vacuum.
Exactly. When we look at the broader research outlined in the text on how men and women with identical skills and experience negotiate their salary or rates, a really clear pattern emerges.
What's the path?
Basically, men generally ask for more and they get it more often. But the vital piece of context here is the mechanism behind why that happens. It is not because they are inherently more qualified.
Right.
It is because they are generally able to ask without carrying the weight of the social consequence that women often carry into those exact same conversations.
Right. Because there's this heavily documented double standard. Women who negotiate assertively are frequently perceived as, like, difficult or demanding, whereas men engaging in the exact same assertive negotiation are perceived as confident or strong leaders.
Yes, exactly.
And we aren't bringing this up as an excuse to just throw our hands up and give up, right? But it's vital context. It explains why the friction is there. It validates why the process feels so hard.
It entirely explains the underlying friction. Like, you aren't imagining that the negotiation table feels different. It structurally is different.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's like running a sprint, where one runner is wearing a weighted vest of social expectations. It's no wonder they pace themselves differently, They approach the hurdles with a lot more hesitation.
That's a perfect analogy.
But what is so painful, the real irony here, is that the harder a woman works, the more of herself she gives, and the less she charges well, the less she is perceived to be worth by the market.
Sadly, yes.
Because the market doesn't look at a rock-bottom price and think, wow, what a generous, humble genius. They look at a low price and think, why is this so cheap? What's wrong with it?
Precisely. The market always takes you at your word. So If society is handing women this metaphorical weighted vest, we have to examine how that actually manifests in daily business
It
decisions.
doesn't just disappear.
No, it morphs into deep-seated psychological habits. The text points out that it's incredibly lazy to just say women have low confidence, because that puts the blame entirely on the individual for a systemic problem that was basically handed to them.
Right, this is a lazy explanation.
Exactly. Instead, there are 5 specific, hidden psychological drivers operating beneath the surface that sustain the undercharging habit.
Well, let's explore how that weighted vest changes behavior then.
Yeah.
Because reading through these 5 drivers, it felt like looking at a psychological diagnostic scan.
It really
A
does.
major one is how the fear of rejection gets dressed up as humility.
Yes, the first driver.
Hmm.
And the mechanics of this are fascinating. Charging a high premium rate inherently means risking a no.
Sure.
And for anyone who has been conditioned by society to seek approval, to accommodate others, and to avoid conflict, well, a no in a business context doesn't just feel like a rejection of a proposal. It internalizes as a personal verdict on your worth.
Oh, wow. So to bypass that really uncomfortable feeling, you preemptively lower the barrier. You price low to make the yes almost guaranteed.
Exactly. But in doing so, you end up confusing being chosen with being valued.
Which is a massive distinction. Being picked because you're the cheapest, most convenient option in the bargain bin is not the same as being sought after and valued for your unique expertise.
Not at all.
And I think that fear of rejection feeds right into the third driver, right? Imposter syndrome doing its quiet damage. Like if you're secretly afraid that you're going to be found out, a low price feels like a protective shield.
That's the insidious nature of it. You might logically know your work is excellent, but there is this lingering internal voice whispering, what if they realize I don't know everything?
Yeah, that little voice.
So you utilize a lower price as an emotional insurance policy. The flawed logic is that if you don't charge a premium rate, the client won't scrutinize your work as harshly. You lower expectations to protect yourself.
But the reality is, it doesn't actually protect you from scrutiny at all. It just lowers the baseline of respect and, well, makes you poorer in the process. Which connects deeply to the second driver on the list, the grateful to be here syndrome. This seems especially prevalent when we talk about women breaking into industries, boardrooms, or like technical fields that weren't historically designed to include them.
Oh, it is incredibly common there. You carry this quiet, persistent background gratitude for just being allowed at the table.
Right.
And while that gratitude is understandable, given the historical context, it quickly becomes a professional trap. It makes you deeply hesitant to ask for your fair share of what the table is actually serving because you don't want to seem ungrateful or rock the boat.
You're just so relieved to have a seat that you don't dare ask for a plate of food. That makes total
And
sense.
it's a tough spot to be in.
But I want to push back a little bit on driver number 4,
Mm-hmm.
this idea of confusing likability with profitability. The premise is that we undercharge because we believe being affordable makes us relatable and generous. But wait, from a purely strategic business standpoint, isn't being affordable a highly effective way to build a base? You get a high volume of clients, you build a solid reputation, people like you because you're giving them a great deal. Isn't that just good business?
I mean, it seems entirely logical on the surface, which is exactly why so many people fall into the trap. But the reality of the market actively counters this strategy.
Really?
Yes. The harsh truth from the text is that no one's mortgage or retirement is ever paid with likability. Furthermore, the clients who seek you out specifically because you are the cheapest option are almost universally the least grateful, the most demanding, and the most likely to nickel and dime your time.
Oof.
Undercharging isn't modesty or kindness. It is compounding financial choice that actively signals low value and attracts a clientele that will treat you accordingly.
That is a harsh but necessary reality check. Okay. The bargain hunters are usually the ones asking for 5 rounds of free revisions. And I suppose all of this is exacerbated by the 5th driver. The simple fact that so few of us were ever taught how to actually negotiate. We just didn't see it modeled.
Right. For generations, many women watched the women around them accept whatever was offered and express gratitude for it. There were no established scripts, no practice runs, and critically, no cultural permission given to simply ask for more.
Yeah, that permission is so key.
Negotiation can feel aggressive or unfeminine when you've never been taught the neutral professional language for it. So you smile and sign the contract at the very first number offered, even when your gut is screaming that you deserve better.
So we have all these complex drivers operating beneath the surface Fear of rejection, imposter syndrome, miscalibrated gratitude. But undercharging doesn't usually like to hang out alone. It almost always pairs up with a best friend.
Oh, yes, it does.
And her name is over-delivering.
They form the most exhausting, expensive partnership in a professional's life.
Because going the extra mile is something we are universally taught to view as a virtue. It feels like we are just committing to excellence. But the line gets crossed when over-delivering stops being a special exception and becomes your default mode of operating.
That's the danger zone.
When you're consistently doing 4 hours of strategic work for a 2-hour administrative rate, or constantly throwing in extra deliverables just because you care, it morphs from a virtue into a incredibly well-disguised form of self-sabotage.
It becomes self-sabotage because chronic over-delivering triggers a damaging chain reaction. The text outlines 4 specific consequences. First, it completely warps client expectations.
How so?
You inadvertently train them to expect more for less. The bonus work you threw in just to be nice on project 1 suddenly becomes the baseline expectation for project 2.
Yeah.
And if you ever try to pull back to the actual agreed upon scope of work, you risk looking like your quality or commitment has suddenly dropped.
Which is terrifying because you're literally just trying to do the exact job you were originally paid for.
Exactly. You've set an impossible precedent. Second, this cycle burns you out quietly and completely. It obviously costs you unbilled hours, but beyond the financial loss, when you are perpetually depleted, your creativity suffers.
Naturally.
Your standard of work slips, and your energy to attract and pitch premium clients entirely diminishes. Third, and this is a mechanism that catches a lot of people off guard, over-delivering actually signals low confidence in your base offering.
Wait, how does giving a client more value signal low confidence?
Because high-value premium professionals deliver the agreed-upon scope with absolute excellence, and they stop there. They don't feel the psychological need to pad the delivery with extras to justify their rate.
I see.
If you are constantly throwing in unrequested additions, the subconscious signal you are sending the client is, I'm secretly worried that what we agreed upon isn't valuable enough on its own to justify what you paid me.
Wow, that is deep.
And finally, the 4th consequence. Over-delivering destroys your future leverage. It leaves absolutely no room to charge more later.
So if I'm giving 4 hours of work for a 2-hour rate, I'm basically putting myself in a cage where the ceiling is already below the floor.
That is exactly what you were doing. It's the exact mechanism of what we call scope creep. It is a massive, slow financial leak that most professionals don't even fully recognize until they are completely drained.
Yeah.
Every single time a client asks, hey, can you just quickly do this one extra thing? And you say yes, without adjusting the invoice, you are voluntarily working for free.
So what is the antidote to that mechanism? Because the idea of flat out saying no to a client is incredibly anxiety-inducing for people who are conditioned to be accommodating.
The brilliance of the solution provided in the text is that you don't actually have to say no. You say yes, but you tie that yes directly to an administrative action.
Okay, what's the trick?
You practice this specific sentence until it becomes muscle memory. Ready? Of course, I'll send over a revised quote for that.
Of course, I'll send over a revised quote for that. I love that. It's completely polite, it's highly professional, and it entirely protects your boundaries.
Yes, it neutralizes the anxiety.
But, that psychological safety net of undercharging and over-delivering comes with a very real mathematical penalty.
Yeah.
We've explored the psychology, but let's look at what this actually costs in literal dollars and cents.
The math is where the abstract feelings become painfully concrete. Let's look at the scenario of Kemi and Tunde from the book.
Let's do it.
Both are independent brand designers. They possess the exact same technical skills and software proficiencies. Kemi currently charges $800 per project. She takes on 4 comprehensive projects a month, which brings her total monthly income to $3,200.
Okay, $3,200 a month for 4 intense projects.
Right. And then we have Tunde, her male counterpart. He has comparable skills, but his portfolio is arguably a bit less polished than Kemi's.
Okay.
However, Tunde operates without that weighted vest. He charges $2,000 per project. He only takes on 3 projects a month, so he is demonstrably doing less work than Kemi, but his monthly income is $6,000.
Oh my goodness.
He is earning nearly double the money for less actual labor.
When you extrapolate the math of Kemi's undercharging over time, the penalty is devastating. I mean, that monthly discrepancy creates an annual income gap of $33,600.
It is a staggering penalty for playing it safe.
Furiously.
And it compounds aggressively. Over a 5-year period, that is $168,000 in uncollected income. And if Kemi had simply charged the market rate and invested that gap at an average 8% annual return, she has essentially lost out on approximately $207,000.
$207,000. That is a down payment on a house. That is a massive chunk of retirement security, completely lost.
Gone.
And she is losing it while simultaneously working harder, caring more, and delivering better results than her counterpart. The core problem has absolutely nothing to do with her talent. It is entirely dictated by her price tag. Real life-changing money is being left on the table every single year simply because people haven't given themselves internal permission to ask for it.
And it is vital to emphasize that this mechanism isn't isolated to freelancers. The exact same trap applies directly to employed professionals. It just wears a slightly different outfit in the corporate world.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
How does that valuation problem manifest when you have a salary and a boss rather than clients and invoices?
It manifests as staying in your role for 2, 3, or 4 years without ever initiating a conversation about a raise, even though your core responsibilities have expanded significantly.
Right.
It looks like consistently taking on complex tasks that are clearly above your pay grade just to show you are a team player without ever negotiating the compensation to match the new output.
The classic trap of doing the job you want, not the job you have,
Right.
but then getting permanently stuck doing both jobs for the salary of the lower one.
Precisely. It also looks like preparing thoroughly for an annual performance review and then simply accepting whatever minimal percentage increase is offered without any pushback because negotiating feels too adversarial.
Right, avoiding the conflict.
Or it's the insidious use of self-deprecating, shrinking language. Instead of stating clearly, I want to lead this new project, you dilute your ambition by saying, I'd love the opportunity to contribute to this if it would be helpful to the team.
Which brings us to a concept in the text that completely flips the script on what we consider professionalism.
What's that?
The idea that shrinking yourself to comfortably fit a role isn't actually professional at all. It is self-erasure. The book says this so powerfully. Shrinking yourself to fit a role is not professionalism. It is self-erasure. And self-erasure has never once been rewarded with a pay rise.
That quote is incredible. It forces you to confront the reality that playing it safe and staying small is actively harming your trajectory.
Okay, so if you, the listener, are thoroughly motivated by the horrifying math of losing $207,000 and the sting of realizing you might be participating in your own self-erasure, how do we actually rewrite this internal programming?
Let's get tactical.
Yeah, how do we fix this without feeling like we are setting our professional relationships on fire? Let's talk about the practical steps here.
The first phase of this change requires objective data to combat the subjective feelings of imposter syndrome. You have to audit your current rates against the actual market today.
Okay.
Look at industry reports, Glassdoor, or have transparent conversations with peers. If you discover you are significantly below the median market rate, you have your first crucial piece of evidence. You aren't actually asking to be too expensive. You are just trying to catch up to the baseline.
And seeing that gap written down on paper is a powerful psychological tool. If you calculate the difference between your current rate and the market rate and multiply that monthly gap by 12, you suddenly have a concrete annual number.
Exactly.
Staring at Kemi's $33,000 gap moves the problem from an abstract feeling of undervalued to a highly motivating, unacceptable loss.
It crystallizes the stakes. Once you have that number, you have to begin testing the waters to build your tolerance for quoting it.
How do you do that safely?
The most effective mechanism for this, especially for freelancers or consultants, is to raise your rates with new clients first. It removes the immediate friction and anxiety of confronting existing relationships.
Oh, that's smart.
You simply quote your new, higher, market-adjusted rate from the very beginning with the next person who inquires. No preloaded discounts. You quote it, and you hold your ground.
But because that imposter syndrome is likely going to flare up the second you hit send on that new proposal, you need a psychological anchor.
Yes.
The text suggests building a wins document as a great mechanism for this, keeping every piece of positive feedback, every successful metric, every glowing testimonial in one easily accessible place. It acts as literal, documented evidence to fight your own brain when it tells you that you aren't worth the new rate.
Evidence is the best antidote to anxiety. And part of that preparation involves having actual scripts ready. When you are nervous, you tend to over-explain. Having tested, neutral language allows you to hold firm without burning bridges.
So if you quote that new rate, and a prospective client pushes back and says it's too high or outside their budget, how do you handle that structurally?
You protect the rate, but you offer flexibility on the scope. You calmly state, I understand budget is a consideration. I can adjust the scope to fit a lower budget, but the rate itself stays the same.
I love the mechanics of that. Yeah. You aren't dropping your price or compromising your value. You are simply dropping the amount of deliverables they get for their smaller budget. And for existing clients.
For existing clients, you give 30 days notice with warmth and firmness, but absolutely no apology.
No apology. Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a moment. What if I use that script? I refuse to discount my rate. I give them the silent treatment, which the text says is a negotiation tool, and they just walk away. What then?
This brings us to the final key insight from the text, a fundamental shifting perspective. Price is a filter.
Explain how that filter works in practice.
The clients and employers who respect your expertise the most are almost always the ones who never blinked at your rate in the first place. They understand the value of a premium solution.
Right.
Conversely, the ones who negotiate the hardest, who aggressively push back, and who try to make you feel guilty for your pricing are universally the ones who demand the most out-of-scope work, pay the slowest, and value your time the least.
That is so true.
A higher rate doesn't just earn you more money, it actively functions as a barrier that keeps out bad clients and attracts better, more respectful working relationships.
Which perfectly contextualizes the story of the freelancer we talked about at the very beginning. The one exhausted, working midnight hours for beginner rates. When she finally decided to raise her rate, she was absolutely terrified.
There she was.
Her hands were physically shaking the first time she quoted the higher number on a discovery call. But the client simply said yes before she'd even finished justifying the sentence. Yeah. And within 6 months of implementing that filter, she had slightly fewer clients, drastically less stress, significantly more creative bandwidth, and a bank account that actually reflected her quality of work. She hadn't upgraded her software or changed her core skills. She simply stopped apologizing for her own excellence.
That operational pivot is available to anyone listening to this right now. The primary obstacle standing between you and your actual earning potential is just a number, and the internal courage required to say it out loud and stand behind it.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this deep dive? It means recognizing that undercharging isn't just a harmless habit or a noble sign of humility. It is an active choice that compounds against your future every single month.
Yes, it is.
We have to internalize that core mantra from the text. You teach people how to treat you, and you teach the market what to pay you. It is time to stop padding your invoices with free work. Stop shrinking your ambitions to fit roles you have clearly outgrown, and start utilizing your price tag to accurately communicate your actual worth to the market. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration. It's been a phenomenal conversation.
It really has. And to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you audit your own practices, we established that your price is a direct signal to the market. So consider the inverse.
Okay.
By consistently undercharging in an attempt to seem accessible or safe, are you actually making yourself completely invisible to the highest tier opportunities? Think about the mechanics of the market. If someone has a high-stakes, million-dollar problem that desperately need to solve, they aren't going to trust the cheapest person in the room with the solution.
They really aren't.
They are actively looking for the premium expert. By playing it safe with your rates, you might be accidentally locking yourself out of the exact